Blarg. I read a book. Hey, so, Master Blarg here, and I just finished reading last night Battlefront II, Inferno Squad. It's the brand new novel by Christie Golden, which details the acts of a group known as Inferno Squad, which are an elite group of Imperial soldiers, the best soldiers that the Empire has to offer. And ultimately, I loved this book. I thought it was fantastic, a really, really great read. Still only my second favorite of the new canon novels that I have read, my favorite being Thrawn. But at the same time, still a really, really fantastic read. And I'm going to go into depth about why that is. So, one of the things that this novel tackles is an issue of moral ambiguity. Gray areas in morality, saying that not everything is as simple, as plain as black and white, as good and evil. And they do this really, really brilliantly through the genre of this novel. Now, I love talking about genre, and that every single genre serves a very specific purpose. And Star Wars as a whole is very interesting because it doesn't neatly fit into one particular genre. Some people might say, well, obviously it's science fiction. Well, it's not, because it also holds such a huge element of fantasy. It's actually more similar to a fantasy novel than it is to a science fiction novel. So it kind of has this blend of fantasy, science fiction, which really informs what the book is trying to say because of the function. The function of fantasy, plain and simple, this is broken down to the simplest terms, is to talk about issues of good and evil. The biggest example I can think about is The Lord of the Rings, how The Lord of the Rings is very, very clearly about good, the Fellowship, versus evil, Mordor, and how this good is ultimate and needs to be fought for at all costs. Star Wars very neatly fits into that genre, talking about the dark side and the light side. Very, very clear, very, very hard lines saying that we must always fight for the innocent, must always fight for good, must always fight for freedom, because that is what truly is good. And tyranny and oppression, those are evil, hence the Empire. This book throws a wrench into that idea of good and evil, because it's told from the perspective of the Empire, of the evil people. Which is where this element of science fiction also comes in. Science fiction's main purpose, I'm going so nerdy here and I'm sorry, science fiction's main purpose is to bring modern issues for today in our own culture and bring them into a different context. For instance, you can see something like District 9, where the issue becomes racism, where you can very clearly tell it's a story about racism, but instead of actually using blacks and whites, they use humans and aliens. And by putting this issue of racism into a different context, it makes it more accessible for us, the reader, to be able to go, oh, yeah, that totally makes sense, as opposed to if it was actually using what the story was talking about, actual race as a setting, rather than humans versus aliens, then we might be a little bit resistant to that. That's one reason that Zootopia works so well. Now, Inferno Squad works well as a science fiction novel because in today's climate, we have there's a huge us versus them mentality in the world, talking about our battles with both Russia or North Korea, and then our issues with ISIS, and or different political parties, Republicans versus Democrats. And we look at these issues and we have a very solid us versus them mentality, where our side, the Americans, the Republicans, whatever, are clearly the good. We are the ultimate source of good, whereas the enemy, the Russians or the Democrats, are very, very evil. And this novel takes that issue and brings it into the point of through Imperial eyes, where our heroes, Iden Versio and the rest of Inferno Squad, are they are seen as the heroes, and they see themselves as the heroes. Everything they do, they are the good guys. And they know it. And the rebellion, everyone who we as readers and watchers of Star Wars for years have said, oh, well, the rebellion is obviously the good guys and the Empire are just pure evil. It kind of flips that on its head and says, well, not necessarily. And very, very mild spoilers for the book, not really, just talking about some of the plot. The purpose of Inferno Squad, or the plot of Inferno Squad, is we see this elite group of Imperial troopers infiltrating the partisans, the group of extremists who were led once by Saw Gerrera, who you might see from Rogue One. And they are very much terroristic, extremist, guerrilla warfare type people willing to blow themselves up in order to fight against the Empire. Which is very, very similar to ISIS in our own culture today. And so we see these Imperials who are supposed to be the bad guys fighting rebels who are supposed to be the good guys, but the Imperials are showing more goodness than the rebels are, who are willing to kill innocent people, or as many Imperials as possible, in order to meet their goals. And I love this quote. I'm not going to say who said it, because that's very spoilery, but I love this quote from the book. Citations, page 288 of the hardcover novel. And one character in this says, "No one really likes showing themselves in a bad light. We all want to think we're doing the right thing, all the time, in every situation." And that's the message of Inferno Squad, is that neither side is 100% good, and neither side is 100% evil. No matter what conflict there is. I personally do believe in absolute good and absolute evil, but those are more in terms of sin and not sin, and that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about political parties or military groups or countries fighting each other. How both sides are entirely human. And this book does a really good job at covering that and talking about that. And it does it in a really, really interesting way, and one that does not feel cheesy. Like, personally, I mentioned Zootopia earlier. Personally, I think Zootopia felt a little bit cheesy in how they handled all their issues, how they handled the modern topics. This book did a really, really good job at making everything feel real. And making me really feel for these Imperial characters, these bad guys. And at the same time feel for the rebels, who are also, in a lot of ways, bad guys. And me just feeling the conflict and being twisted up and bent out of shape looking at this conflict. And this book did a wonderful journey through that, and it makes me really excited for Star Wars Battlefront II when it comes out this coming November. I'm hoping to have an Xbox by that point. But, long story short, too long, didn't read. This book is awesome. You should read it. And enjoy a really great journey. So those are my couple of random thoughts. This is my review of Battlefront II Inferno Squad. If you like this video, you should probably watch this one right here, which is my Wonder Woman review, talking about my thoughts and my sister's thoughts about the Wonder Woman movie. And you can also click here for random whatevers, because I don't know what's going to be there yet. Who knows? But it's going to be great. And because I'm trying to be a YouTuber and be all that popular and whatnot, please like my video and subscribe to my channel so that, you know, people can hear what I have to say and see more of my stuff. Yeah, because you like it. Otherwise, you would not still be watching at this point.